Here we are again. Here's me bumbling my way through putting something together for a live set. Couple of pieces of equipment are changed around a little bit. You'll notice there's a bit of a gap there now. However, today what we're going to do is we're going to get some MIDI going on between a couple of these guys and perhaps go through a bit of the routing as well. So what we'll do is we'll load up the project from last time. And what we're going to be doing is pretty straightforward. We're just going to be sending control and gate to both of these analog synths. At the moment, they're essentially patched by the matrix mixer with the Boog, the Behringer Model-D going through the Starlab, and the Behringer CAT going through the Magneto. One thing I also have here is I've got a couple of gain channels and a bit of distortion just via some LEDs, or saturation, I guess is the right way of saying it, which we can kind of play around with a little bit as well, but that probably doesn't really mean that much for today. One thing that we've done a little bit differently this time is we put the kick on channel 2. And we've moved the rest of what's going on the MPC into channels 9 and 10. It just works a little bit better with the matrix mixer for me that way. Another thing as well is our main master clock comes from the ERM-Multiclock. Channel 1 is the MPC, channel 2 is the 707, and third one at the moment just goes to the 303. So what we'll do is, as this is just our kind of default and template on sequence 1, later on we'll probably move that further down so we've got way for the tracks that we make. And I've got the first First 8 channels, essentially their faders are off there. That's what we set up last time. A couple other parameters to play with in there as well. So we want to make sure that when we add these in, we're up a little bit higher so we've got some room. I'm going to leave a gap and probably start off at 17. And there what we'll do is we'll put in the Model-D, affectionately known as the Boog. So just to make sure we've got audio coming through, that's just a tuning one there, so we can hear audio. That's a good thing, obviously. And if we look, should see we're coming through there. Chuck a bit of reverb on there. So we got that sorted. Next thing we need to do is change to a MIDI track. Let's give this a name. And our MIDI program will give a name as well. And what we need to do here is set it up to the right output, which I believe is out from A, and we'll have to get to the right channel. Okay, so on the dip switches on the back of that one, I've set that to channel 2. So that's pretty much it. We'll go do the same thing for the CAT here as well. So we'll go up a track and we'll add another MIDI program. So the CAT and the CAT. Now, what do we got going on here? Let's put that on. Hopefully we should be able to hear something if this is free running. Okay, so we can get something there. Ah, of course. We need to make sure that we set the output . So at least we've got something going on there. All right, so let's just put ourselves in. Don't really know where we want to go for the moment, but let's just give ourselves an A minor. I believe at the moment there's a little bit of a glitch with this version where you have to go up and down on the octaves. Yeah, so that one's good to go. So essentially that's pretty straightforward. Just see, that's one thing that we didn't do to the Boog, was set the right even want to. We can adjust those later on anyway. Just all depends on how we want those guys to sit with each other. So that part of it is pretty straightforward. As always, save. Oh, we want to do a save as, don't we? Alrighty, we're saved in there nicely. If you're using the latest version of firmware from Akai at the moment, you may like to ensure that you save pretty often. I did have a project a little while ago I was playing with where it wouldn't allow me to save. It was a bit of a throwaway project, but it still would have been nice to be able to save it. So we can do a number of different things now, essentially play off here, or we could set a keyboard up so that we're able to just play in from there. So perhaps, what else would we like to do here? I don't know, I think for those two guys, that is probably it. Let's put a new project on the 707. We'll just start off with a default blank one, and we'll just ensure that it is working off this guy. So at the moment, we only have this one on. If you remember from last time, we should have some drums hiding in there somewhere. And if I play, once it gets around to it, so we got that guy going. Let's start off with a new project on here. So let's see how well I remember what I'm doing on here. So what I'll probably do is I'll probably try and get drum clips for the first couple, and then we'll maybe play around with some synths or stuff on there. I don't want to use too many off here, but they're kind of good for putting some fillers and some other stuff that's not covered by those two guys. So create a clip. Now we should normally be able to hear. So we're probably not going to be using a lot of kick. Presumably anyway. what I want to do is, because we need to make sure that these guys are all in sync when we play something, so to do that, all I've got is to have this one synced off here. I've just set this to be the MIDI slave, and it's taking the MIDI time clock from there. So let's load that one. Just for fun, can't go wrong with a 909, yeah? And what we'll do is, cool, so I just decided to choose quite a fast attack sound, and we'll do the same thing on the Akai. And that way, what we're actually going to be able to do is make sure that they're time aligned properly, because sometimes they're out by a tick or two. So let's go back to some of these drums. So drum sample, let's just grab a, oops. Grab a nice little hat from somewhere. Awesome. Let's just load that up onto there. Just make that 4 bars long, 4 beats long. Just so we just want to make a loop, and we can adjust the trim on those guys in the time side of things. So let's go in and see what's going on. So what we can do is we will just turn down this bad boy until we get a level where we can hear both of them going. Sounds like we're pretty good there. All right, so essentially now they should be hitting at the same time, or at least close. We may need to adjust that a little bit more later on. So now we've got the Akai sending MIDI to both of these guys, and we also have MIDI timecode coming from the ERM-Multiclock and coming into here. Also, once we've got a couple of clips here, we can use we can set up the 707 as a MIDI device, and when we do that, we can also send it program changes. So what we might do is, we might actually just pop that in there somewhere now. However, before we do that, I'd like to get the 303 in there as well. So, same as what we did before, we are just assigning the channels. Give it a name, and for that one the MIDI port will be the ERM, and it's coming out of the third one. So cool. And where would we like to go next? So we've got 3. Let's put this one in as a 707. Add another one. At the moment, I'm not sure actually what channel that's supposed to be looking at. And that one is coming out of the 2nd channel out of the ERM. So that's just essentially there to hold a space for somewhere for me to do program changes later on. And where that's going to come in handy is when I'm stepping through the patterns or the sequences on the Akai, when I have different banks of sequences on the 707, just means they're going to stay in time, so I can kind of build songs using both of these, especially for percussion. And when I change between the different sequences, they'll follow along. At least that's the plan. So we might kind of just leave that one for the moment. I think as far as setting up some of the MIDI, we're kind of most of the way there. Do one. So that's coming off the 707. So presumably, I think, yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head how the MIDI channel's going here, but I think we're obviously getting the drums there. And because we're in a natural minor there, we're obviously missing a few. Chromatic will give us all of them. I'll be up a little higher. So there's our kick. It's a rather interesting map they've got for those, but anyway, that's that. At least we know they're talking to each other, so I haven't plugged the MIDI cable into the wrong spot. And I think that's probably where we're going to wrap it up. Just as a bit of a heads up, this is the first one of the videos you've looked at of mine. I have got a previous one where we looked at setting up a few of the drum tracks inside here, and also some of the control on the Launch Control XL. So that was mainly a bit of MIDI mapping in between there, both to be able to control some parameters on the drum plugin, and also to be able to control the first 8 channels, the volume on them in there. So I think we'll wrap it up and leave that one there. And thanks very much for watching, listening, whatever you're doing. Enjoy, and we'll have some more coming up later.